kidnapped and locked up.
The woman fought for her life, beating the doors and the walls of the cell with bloodied hands.
A victim managing to break free.
If she didn't do what she did, we wouldn't be here today, and Mrs. Zuberi would not be in custody.
A suspect now behind bars, and a case that's far from over.
Sadly, we believe there are more victims.
A shocking announcement by the Portland FBI office today.
Federal investigators say they have a man in custody that they believe is responsible for kidnapping and locking up a woman. Tonight, we have team coverage of this developing story, from the latest on the investigation to reaction from the city, where the suspect lives, and a closer look at the suspect's history.
This case all started when investigators say 29-year-old Negasi Zuberi kidnapped a woman in Seattle back in July. Then they say he drove her to a home in Klamath Falls, where he locked her in a makeshift cinder block cell in the garage before she was able to escape.
She realized that she needed to get out of that residence because her life was in danger, and she took the substantial steps to force her way out of that cell, and then she ran out into public, flagged down the first vehicle she could find, and then she was taken to safety.
The home where the woman was held was located on North El Dorado Avenue in Klamath Falls. Fox 12's Adrian Thomas is the only Portland reporter to travel there tonight. He joins us live with neighborhood reaction to Zuberi's arrest. Adrian?
Well, Pete, according to an unsealed FBI criminal complaint, this house behind us is where Negasi Zuberi allegedly held a woman captive in his garage in a makeshift cell after allegedly kidnapping her in Seattle. According to that complaint, this all happened in the early hours here on July 15th. One neighbor we spoke with says he and others nearby had no idea something so sinister was going on in this garage. Disturbing photos just released by the FBI show what appears to be a makeshift cinder block cell in the garage of this unassuming house in Klamath Falls. In the FBI's criminal complaint, it states law enforcement obtained a search warrant for the house on July 16th. Lee Ashford, who lives just a block away, says at the time he and other neighbors didn't know what was happening.
We didn't know if it was FBI or state police or what, but they were here pretty much all day. And it just, obviously something was going on. It was, we speculated along with everybody else we talked to, but didn't really know anything.
Ashford says he believes Zuberi had been living there for a short time and says there was zero indication there were any issues.
But stuff happens everywhere. Behind closed doors, who knows what's going on.
And back out here live, civil court documents in Klamath County that we've obtained show that Zuberi was renting this house from a couple that actually lives right down the street from here. We've tried to contact that couple multiple times, including knocking on their door and just to see if they would give us a comment on this situation, and we haven't been able to reach them. Live in Klamath Falls, Adrian Thomas, Fox 12 Oregon.
All right, Adrian, thank you. Meanwhile, Fox 12's Connor McCarthy has been covering this story all day and was at the FBI press conference this morning.
He joins us live in Northeast Portland to tell us more about the suspect and the potential for more victims. Connor?
Well, Pete and Riel, the FBI says they believe this case will have a national impact. But right now, Zuberi is being held in federal custody down in Reno, Nevada, after he was arrested the middle of last month. Now, FBI investigators do believe that there are potentially more victims in possibly 10 different states, and they're hoping with this case coming to light, more women will come forward. It's a case that sounds like something straight out of a horror movie.
The disturbing evidence uncovered to date points to an individual's ongoing and escalating pattern of violence targeting women in multiple states throughout the country.
The Portland FBI office believes this man, 29-year-old Negasi Zuberi, is responsible for kidnapping a woman in Seattle on July 15th by posing as a police officer, then driving nearly 500 miles to his home in Klamath Falls, Oregon, repeatedly sexually assaulting her along the way. Agents say the woman escaped Zuberi the same day, but it's what investigators found in his garage that was shocking.
When police responded to a 911 call in Klamath Falls, Oregon on July 15th, they discovered a makeshift cinder block cell with a metal door and a singular light bulb above for light.
Investigators believe the woman was locked up inside this makeshift cell for hours. They say she escaped by banging on the door of the cell until it eventually broke open, then running into the street where she was able to flag down a driver to call 911.
According to the complaint, the woman fought for her life, beating the doors and the walls of this cell with bloodied hands.
As investigators were looking for evidence in Zuberi's home, they tell us they found a notepad in his car with notes of his plan. We're told he called the alleged kidnapping Operation Takeover, where he would look for a woman who, quote, doesn't have a bunch of people in their life. Then another page shows a drawing of where he wanted to dig 100 feet down and create a space made out of waterproof concrete and foam insulation. With the evidence investigators found, they believe there are more victims in 10 different states on both coasts of the country.
And her will to survive triggered a law enforcement response that may have actually saved many other women from a similar nightmare.
Zuberi was found in a Reno, Nevada shopping mall parking lot with his wife and child the same day the woman escaped. There was a brief standoff, but he was eventually taken into custody. He's now waiting for extradition back to Oregon.
I want to thank the brave women who fought for their lives to get us where we are here today. Now it is our turn to take their burden and fight for them, any other victims out there, and seek justice.
Well, Pete and Nora, the FBI did say that they have identified at least 4 other victims, but they did not say which states they're from. Now, Zuberi does face 2 federal charges, including interstate kidnapping and crossing state lines with an individual with the intent to commit a criminal sexual act. Now, if he is convicted of these 2 counts, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. Live in Northeast Portland, Connor McCarthy, Fox 12 Oregon.
All right, Connor, thank you. A suspect has been arrested, but the work is far from over in this case. As we mentioned, investigators believe there may be other victims.
Now, today, Fox 12 Now's Greg Nibbler spoke with a local law school professor about this case.
What would be some of the reasons, and just to ask the basic questions, what would be some of the reasons that we didn't get more information about any other potential victims or anything else that they believe he may have done?
You know, we sort of generally think that we're looking toward a trial down the road. And so if you have a trial, one of the things that the prosecution will be obligated to do is to enter into discovery and turn over information to the defense. And so until then, though, the FBI might want to be holding back some of their key details, because the more you reveal now, the earlier head start the defense can have on getting its case ready. Also, you might be worried about influencing or tainting the investigation into other areas. As you mentioned, there are anticipated to be other victims. You want the information to come forward, not because people are sort of responding to what the FBI has already said. Then they might just be parroting the information. If you instead just simply say there may be other victims, the people come forward, you get a sense of whether they have accurate information or not based on what they're telling the FBI.
Now, our news team did some digging today into Negassi Zuberi's background and his ties to the Vancouver area.
Fox 12's Stephanie Domrot joins us now with a look at what we found.
Yeah, good evening, Pete and Nora. Well, we did find that there were 2 cases filed in Clark County Superior Court involving Negassi Zuberi. One involves a restraining order. The other was an eviction complaint. Our team went through dozens of pages of court documents that show alleged kidnapping suspect Negassi Zuberi lived in a Vancouver neighborhood from at least November of last year through March of this year. According to the eviction complaint filed in November, Zuberi lived in a home on Northeast 116th Court. The complaint also alleges that Zuberi was responsible for several violations, according to the property's manager, including changing the locks of the unit without permission and keeping and selling dogs on the property. According to court records, the situation was then settled out of court. The other case filed involved a restraining order from a neighbor. The court documents were filed in March of this year and accused Zuberi of harassment and threats of violence towards a neighbor, including a text message that allegedly said, quote, "I'm going to F you up," along with references to police calls that Zuberi was, quote, about to do something bad. The restraining order also alleges that police records state someone had been, quote, punched in the face at the residence. The documents also showed the neighbor requested the protection order to be in place for more than a year to, quote, keep myself, my wife, and my children safe. According to court records, Nagase filed a restraining order in response to that neighbor. Both were dismissed by a judge. We sent a crew out to the neighborhood this afternoon to hear from people who may remember Zuberi. They tell us there were often many people in the home, up late hours with lots of noise.
We moved in about 6 months ago. There was just always a bunch of dogs barking over there. We never saw any movement, any people moving around. Just a bunch of dogs barking and trash piled up. And yeah, there was law enforcement coming in and out quite frequently.
That neighbor went on to say that while he never thinks he met Zuberi, he was aware that he moved out about a month or two ago. And since then, he says things have been quiet at the home. And we will have more on this developing story throughout the night here on Fox 12 and on KPTV.com. Reporting in studio tonight, Stephanie Domerat, Fox 12 Oregon.
All right, Steph, very interesting. Thank you. And here's a look at where the case stands tonight. Zuberi is currently in jail outside of Reno, Nevada. He's awaiting extradition back to Oregon to face kidnapping and other charges in the case. We're working to find out when that will happen. Investigators are now hoping any other potential victims come forward in the 10 states where they know he lived. Those are Oregon, Washington, California, Colorado, Utah, Florida, New York, New Jersey, Alabama, and Nevada.
If you believe you have been a victim or have any information concerning this case, the FBI asks that you visit the website they have set up. You can find that link to this story on KPTV.com. You can call 1-800-CALL-FBI or contact the FBI Portland Field office at 503-224-4181. It's right there on your screen. You can also submit a tip online. Go to tips.fbi.gov.
Such a disturbing story. We're gonna have more on that, of course, as we've noted. But right now, want to get you updated on the latest with the weather. Hot day here in Portland.
Yes, we went from that very, 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 very warm we talked about yesterday.
Straight to hot.
Straight to hot. We did make it to 90 today, and this is not the last time we should see that on the thermometer. We have at least 4 days where we have the potential, and if you add tomorrow, that would actually be 5. Now, tomorrow could be slightly cooler than today, but we're looking at temperatures getting into that warm range to hot because of that high pressure that's building. Here's where we have topped out so far today. You can see the valley down all the way down into the Roseburg area, made it into the 90s, 95, same as the gorge or out into the Dalles they had yesterday. And then along the coast, same as they had yesterday, very, very close. Here's what we're looking at tomorrow, and you see how close we are to getting 90. So 89 is what we're looking at, but the chance of that being a degree or two warmer is still there. That puts us in the prospect of having several days in a row in the 90s. That's what we're seeing here. We'll go into more detail about this and why this is happening and then how quickly we cool back. We'll do that here in just a few minutes.
The 6 o'clock news is just getting started.
Still to come, the latest felony charges against former President Donald Trump now bring the total to 78. Coming up, details on his next court appearance.
Plus, the personal information of tens of thousands of Oregonians may be at risk. The latest data breach and who is impacted.